Hey, everybody.
I'm only here to annoy everyone.
Oh, that's just great. I'm glad that you're not here to actually do the thing. Usually we start this off with a little music, but I got distracted with doing like stuff, and so I didn't have the time to pull that up and do all the majiggers, and so that's fine. That's okay. Here we go.
So, what is the focus of today's conversation?
The focus of today's conversation is the focus of all of my conversations. It's basic income.
Well, it's one thing to focus on basic income, but the reality is saying, oh, basic income's great, when I know it is great and I completely support it. But how about, rather than focusing on basic income, we focus on how do we get the things that we want done? How do we create pressure points so that the government pays attention and the media pays attention? Why don't we try to focus on strategizing how to achieve goals rather than talk about whether or not these goals are good?
You know, that's essentially always my goal, is to talk about ways to implement basic income in a strategy which makes sense. I'm always that's my main focus. My main focus is to talk about ways where basic income is an attractive policy, and I'm only about that. I invited Cheryl Hardcastle, who's a former MP, and I thought it might be good to see if she could shed some light on this, although I never heard back from her. And, I think that it would be an interesting angle for, because this is open forum, so I thought that it would be, and it was also kind of impromptu as well. So I thought it would be a good idea to just bounce ideas back and forth. She's all politics, and she's just like you in the sense that she doesn't give a crap about people's feelings. She cares about implementation, and she cares about hard facts. That's what I want. I want people who are interested in facts, and that's it. That's what I want.
Okay, so my suggestion to you is that you reach out to Hugh Siegel, he's a conservative former senator and a huge proponent of basic income, and invite him someday to give suggestions. The other thing I would do is to look at senators who support the idea of basic income and invite them, because although senators don't need to get elected, they still have an agenda, and they are still more than willing to find people who are willing to spread their message.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We do on occasion see Senator Kim Payton here, and she did write Bill S-233, but I think that there's also are things which have to go unsaid, at least as far as she's concerned. I would also like to get some perspective as to what Senator Chris Ben-Mah was on about, and I think that's an important conversation. Today, the focus is how to build a strategy, what kind of strategy it should look like. I have one in my mind, and I want to bounce that kind of thing back and forth. That's what I want.
Okay, so Senator Denise Batters is fairly right-wing. She's supporting Pierre Poilievre, which is a huge disappointment, but whatever. But she tweeted out that she does not support MAiD at all when it comes to mental health issues. And I tweeted back to her, well, if you don't support MAiD, then you're going to have to support people with disabilities and people on social assistance with more money so that they don't have to live in poverty, and that they would rather choose MAiD than not have enough food to eat. And she reacted to it. She sent a positive, and then she and I got into a back and forth a couple of times. So, I think she is approachable to come to this space and explain from her perspective why she doesn't support MAiD, and have us explain to her why we think that UBI would negate the need for MAiD for all but people who are terminally ill and in chronic pain.
Denise Patters, you said, Senator?
Batters. Senator
Oh,
Denise Batters, B-A-T-T.
okay, Denise Batters. So, yeah, that's another component of the basic income strategy is we do a lot of talking about how basic income would affect MAiD. And specifically how, because MAiD and poverty is, they're closely tied. Now, a while ago, I was talking about, not I was talking about, but it was talked about how a study was released which pointed towards how poverty does not in fact impact MAiD. And I looked up the study, and it was a bit detrimental. So the study was printed, it wasn't printed, it was referred to in the CBC. And I looked it up and I read it, and it was conducive to between 2016 to 18. And if I'm remembering those dates correctly. And so I thought to myself, this is wrong. You shouldn't be printing something now which isn't relevant to now. You should be, if you're going to talk about how MAiD and poverty are related to each other, then talk about the time frame, how they weren't related to each other. The other thing that it talked about was demographic, and it talked about location, and so the specifics were completely irrelevant to the time now, because the people who are suffering from poverty, how poverty affects MAiD, are they're city central. They're where housing is the most expensive, and I think that's a very important thing to factor in. And so that makes a huge difference.
Okay, but here's the thing that really should impact that is MAiD for mental health issues is new, and therefore MAiD for non-mental health issues, it was very rigorously looked at, and therefore no, it's not going to have any impact. Poverty is not going to have any impact on it because it's people who have chronic pain and are going to die. Doing it now is a completely different set of circumstances, because now you have people who are listed for mental health, which includes depression and includes anxiety and includes just giving up on life, which is very, very different than having liver cancer.
Yeah, and I think that that's another thing to note as well, is that C7 is being expanded. And I'm not sure, is that part of what you're talking about? Like how C7 is being expanded for the sake of mental health and for the sake of children as well?
Yes. I mean, it's been expanded very recently. And before it was strictly physical medical conditions.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was something else that the study didn't cover. When the CBC published it, it was really upsetting. We have something which is very important to establish, especially in the media, where we have, because the CTV had talked about that person who they named as both Denise and also Sophia first and then Denise, and I think that we really need to regard, we have to focus on the people who are establishing themselves as candidates for MAiD before we start looking at old academia, which is not relevant anymore. And then we have to look, especially, as you say, expansion of MAiD, because we cannot expand MAiD.
So let's put things in perspective. The Aboriginal people of the Canadian Arctic used to put older people and people who could not contribute on ice floes. And MAiD is doing that now to everyone, right? If we say that putting somebody on an ice floe and sending them out to starve or die or become polar bear food is wrong, well, so is MAiD, right? If we can't, and it's for people who cannot contribute to society that they are expanding MAiD to. And that is a moral issue. It is saying, quite frankly, people who cannot contribute don't deserve to live. This is an easy way for us to save on social services, taxes, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's wrong myself. I don't know about you, but I think it's wrong.
I do too.
The other thing I think we need to do, just from a tactical point of view, is we need to find a friend in the media, maybe City TV Toronto, because mine's Toronto-centric, who supports or at least is willing to write about issues around poverty, around MAiD, around disability, and start inviting him or her, probably a her if I have someone in mind, to these spaces once every 2 weeks so that she can not necessarily contribute, but listen to what's going on and perhaps write about how people are concerned.
Yes, well, actually, it's funny that you say that because there was a member, I'll say unnamed member of the media, who did show interest in doing that yesterday, but like she got involved, and yesterday we were coming off of this high of speaking to Scott Santons, and so, you know, we involved her more than she wanted. You know, she backed out a little bit, but she has shown interest in participating in a listening component. And so later on, I'm going to send her a recording of this session, if she isn't able to drop by at some point. But I have invited her, and as a listener only. So that's what happened. I messaged her and said we're sorry that it got awkward, and now you're able to come if you'd like to as a listener only. Anyway, yeah, that's something, because you're speaking to the effect of that, and it's a good thing. But to your other point, I think that another crucial element to consider is that there was a PBO report that was released which talked about exactly what you're speaking about, which is how MAiD actually saves money. And this is something which is crucial to note. And so one of the concepts of my vision of basic income is how it actually creates taxpayers. And I appreciate all advocates of basic income. And I think that one of the remarkable things about Scott Santons is that he has created a revolutionary movement. Basic income wouldn't be the thrilling concept that it is without somebody like him. But I have to confess, I do not stand behind the notion of true universality where the ultra-rich are concerned.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but the reality is it just gets clawed back through taxation. And you cannot have a universal basic income without it being universal. It's easier to give them their $2,000 a month and then claw it back at $2,100 a month, which they pay quarterly because they're rich, rather than, you know, once a year, the way you and I do. But yeah, universality means universality. And it is something that helps sell the whole concept, because you can't have any other way. It's going to be targeted, it's going to be income based, it's going to be means tested, it's going to require bureaucracy, and that all is an argument against UBI. So if you introduce a UBI, make it a UBI and then just tax the shit out of people who are making $250,000 a year.